We'll begin our show tonight with a new face at the helm of the federal NDP.
Canada, mark your calendar. The NDP comeback starts now.
In a decisive leadership victory yesterday, Vancouver-based filmmaker and activist Avi Lewis has been elected to lead the New Democrats. He was elected by party members on the first ballot, garnering 56% of the vote, nearly doubling the vote count of runner-up MP Heather McPherson. In comparison, Jagmeet Singh won the leadership in 2017 with nearly 54% of the vote. It's the first step in what some characterize as an uphill climb to rebuild the NDP after the last federal election, and recent floor crossing reduced the party to just 6 seats in the House of Commons. Plus, Mr. Lewis's election has already been met with mixed reaction. The leaders of the party's provincial arm, in Alberta and Saskatchewan, are moving quickly to distance themselves from Lewis's energy and climate policies. Mr. Lewis has been an outspoken opponent of additional fossil fuel development and is against new pipelines. In a letter, Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi says the direction of the federal New Democrats under Lewis's leadership is, quote, not in the interests of Alberta. And Saskatchewan NDP leader Carla Beck describes Mr. Lewis's views as, quote, ideological and unrealistic, and says she won't meet with him unless he reverses his position. Avi Lewis is the new leader of the NDP. He's with us live tonight from Winnipeg. Hi, Mr. Lewis. Pleasure to have you on this show, and a sincere congratulations on your win.
Thank you, Vassy. I've waited a long time to be interviewed by you, so I'm ready. Bring it on.
Okay. My first question is a simple one. Do you want to be Prime Minister?
Of course, absolutely. There's absolutely no point in going into federal politics without. This whole business of the NDP being the conscience of the parliament or pragmatic, these are, in my view, they're all false oppositions. I think one succeeds in politics by having a clear conscience, especially in a time of war and instability. And the goal is to not just to get back party status, which of course we need to do soon, not to become the official opposition again, which we will do after that, but to take power and make the change in people's lives when people are facing grinding difficulty and uncertainty, just trying to get by in an economy where corporations and banks are making fountains of money.
The leaders of your party in Alberta and Saskatchewan don't feel the suite of policies that you've put forward will do that for their provinces. They intimated so in the statements that they released literally seconds after you won. Does it matter to you that they think you stand for something that does not represent them?
Well, it's not the suite of policies. I think there's just one disagreement with various provincial parties and governments, and it's whether or not we need to be adding more and more fossil fuel production. And we have a respectful difference of opinion about that. As you pointed out at the top of the segment, we have a huge mandate of the NDP base, and we've been really clear on the policy positions from the very beginning of the campaign. Oil is destabilizing our planet. It's destabilizing our economy. It's destabilizing your ability to fill up at the pump without crying on your credit card. And it's going to create another price shock, another inflation spiral when the cost of living is already out of reach. So countries around the world are moving beyond fossil fuels, diversifying their economies quickly. China is rapidly transitioning. The markets for oil and gas are starting to dwindle. There are gluts in LNG, for instance, right now. I think it's a bad business bet. But more importantly, we need to take care of those workers in Saskatchewan and Alberta. I want to see Carla Beck and Naheed Nenshi premiers of their provinces. I'm passionate about that. Scott Moe and Daniel Smith got to go, and the NDP in both of those provinces is strong, principled parties. We have a difference over one particular issue, and I've been elected leader with a mandate to have a very clear position on that, to put workers first, to develop new industries, clean manufacturing, an east-west power grid, power lines rather than pipelines, tens of thousands of unionized jobs, using Canadian steel in new industrial policy that will create the family-supporting unionized jobs for fossil fuel workers to transition into. And those jobs have to be created first on an emergency basis. I've been saying this for 6 months. I'm not sure that Carla and Naheed have seen all of my comments. We've been reaching out to Carla for months for a meeting, and my door's always open. I think we might be at the part of the movie, Vassy, where people are settling into their seats and pushing their back, like finding a place to put their stuff down. But I think the movie's going to start. We're going to settle down. We're going to have these hard conversations, because they are hard conversations, but we're going to get through it by talking. And the NDP mountain of shared values which is the priority of making working class life more livable in a country awash in wealth. We share all of that. Commitments to healthcare, commitments to housing, investing in the care economy. We got lots of common ground.
I do understand that point, and I certainly do understand when you say you have all these other policies. To them, though, what I take from their statements is that the policy that you say is just one part of your platform or one part of the suite of measures that you would put forward is a huge part of why, though you want to see them become premier, they do not appear to want to see you become prime minister. How can you assure people who voted for you, just let me finish if you don't mind, sir. How can you assure people who voted for you yesterday that you actually have a shot at that when, you know, two very prominent leaders of your party at the provincial level don't want that for you?
Let's take our cue from the most popular politician in the country right now, Wab Kinew. I spent a very warm hour plus in his office yesterday, and he said yesterday that we don't have to agree on every little thing in order to do big things together. Wab and I are far apart on the issue, on this particular issue of fossil fuel expansion. There's a big talk about major project, whether it's in the Port of Churchill or somewhere else on the northern coast. And if it ends up that there is a fossil fuel project to anchor that, I have not been elected with a mandate to support a project like that from federal NDP members across the country. Wab and I will be able to disagree on that specific issue, although it is a big one. I'm not minimizing how important our energy future is. I'm very passionate about it. In the UK this past week, they just passed new rules requiring every new home build to have a heat pump and solar panels because of the energy price shock that we are in right now as a response, as a consequence of this illegal, reprehensible war on Iran. So this is one of the major issues on earth today. But Wab and I can sustain our differences. It's a Democratic Party. We have a long tradition of these debates. It's healthy to have debates in a party with democracy as its middle name. It means our tent is growing, and it's an NDP tradition to do so. And I believe I will be able to reestablish good relations across the prairies. I have had good conversations with Nahid, and I think he might have a little bit of misinformation that has been passed on in terms of some of the specifics of his social media posts, but we'll discuss those things, I hope, in private meetings as New Democrats do, and make sure that we get each other elected.
So part of what you said there initially to try and sort of assuage some of those concerns around the sector and the transition and what happens to all those jobs is what you pitched during this campaign, right? Which is using, like, on an emergency basis, kind of addressing the issues associated with climate change and promising that doing so would create 1 million jobs. If that promise was feasible, if it was realistic, why didn't more unions support your leadership bid?
Lots of unions supported my leadership bid. I had many union leaders and many
but not as many as Rob Ashton.
Locals, grassroots. Sure, I mean, Rob is a union leader, and it was a lot of fun watching him try not to swear like a dock worker during debates. He didn't always succeed, but you know, he's a union leader running for office. One would hope that he would have the majority of union support. There are also hard conversations around this important topic to be had with private sector unions. I'll be meeting with Unifor, with the steel workers, with the United Food and Commercial Workers as part of being leader of the NDP. Many of those conversations have already started, and they're ongoing. The vision, though, Vassy, is to really stabilize the future for Canada. It's a very uncertain and scary time, and Canadians understand that big things are afoot, and we are in the mood to do big things. There are big nation-building projects underway. The country is in that mode right now. In fact, the Prime Minister has proposed a defense industrial strategy that promises $500 billion of military spending in the next decade. What I am saying is that rather than increasing our arms exports by 50 years and creating 125,000 jobs for $500 billion, we should invest using the powerful tool of public ownership in major industrial projects related to energy transition, related to energy self-sufficiency, like a 21st century electrical grid anchored by battery storage that could unleash a renewable revolution in Canada and create those good unionized jobs, as you say, as I say, on an emergency basis, because the federal government has money to spend. The private sector is undertaxed. We need a wealth tax. Big six banks made $70 billion in 1 year last year. This country has a lot of wealth. It's time we had a federal government that put it to work, directly addressing the climate emergency, directly addressing the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in an impossible economy. And the cost of living can be slashed while emissions are slashed at the same time. And that's a big offer that many New Democrats have responded to so far.
It is a big offer, and I'll tell you that's why I wanted to sort of focus it in on the questions I asked, because when you reference the promises from the government around job creation and the defense on industrial base, they also made very specific, we're going to create X hundreds of thousands of jobs in the next 10 years. And I had very, challenging questions to them on how they know that. That's why I'm asking you the same thing, right? You're saying 1 million jobs, right? This is not a promise that the Canadians have heard this before. There is a government that used to be in office for the last 10 years that introduced the Canada Sustainable Jobs Act, that talked about a just transition, that spent $68 billion of public money on that green transition and promised people in the oil patch that there would be good paying jobs to transition to. But it didn't materialize. Why should they believe that under you it will?
$68 billion? Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I just want to be clear, though. On what, though?
Well, like on a million different things, incentivizing EVs, I
didn't see that kind of money going directly into a green industrial strategy that would create new industries. Let's get a heat pump in every home in Canada and slash people's heating bills and slash emissions at the same time. The problem, Vassy, is a fundamental difference in approach. And I think that the kind of commitments that we're making have a stronger chance of being executed if and when we win government, because we're proposing to actually use the power of public ownership to do it. The Liberal approach is to give public money to private corporations and hope that they do it. Look at EV rebates. Look at heat pump rebates. Every time the government announces rebates, the prices just go up an equivalent amount. The industry hoovers up the subsidies, and those key elements, consumer products that are key to the energy transition, are still too expensive and out of reach. We need to do it under public ownership so that we can keep costs down, or ideally provide these things free. In PEI, there are free heat pumps for most homes. It is possible to prioritize these things in a rich country, create local, bring back domestic manufacturing, create local manufacturing all across this land, great jobs in communities, and actually produce things that Canadians need with Canadian steel, Vassy, that we can't sell to the United States because of tariffs. There is a vision in which we restore economic independence, create jobs, make life more secure and affordable, and just calm things down rather than investing in disruptive generative AI, fossil fuels that are blowing things up around the world, including our economy and our prices, and actually invest in things that will be more secure for Canadians.
I have just 30 seconds left, and I hope we can have a longer discussion about this later on, but you're predicating all of that on things being publicly run and therefore, being more cost efficient for Canadians, being cheaper for Canadians. Don't we have examples in Canada Post, in Via Rail, of the opposite being true? Again, aren't you predicating your main propositions to Canadians on, in this case, falsehoods?
Actually, we have examples of exactly the opposite. We have shoved Canada Post so far into the market mindset that every few months we have a national conversation about why isn't Canada Post making money? Vassy, does the ambulance service make money? Do the police services make money? We're talking about a fundamental public service, and we are so soaked in the market mindset that we expect the post office to make money. It's a public service. It's not for making money. It's for delivering mail to Canadians as part of a fundamental public activity. And that's the mindset change that we need to make public corporations work. In the Second World War, the Minister of Everything, C.D. Howe, created 18 new crown corporations, and Canada played an unbelievable role in fighting fascism in Europe. We need a mission moment like that in Canada, and I think we can have one.
Okay, I've got to leave it there. I would just say I think most people hope Canada Post doesn't necessarily make money, but stops losing money. But we'll leave it on that note, and we'll have another conversation soon. I hope, Mr. Lewis, congratulations again. Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, and congratulations. Avi Lewis is the new leader of the federal NDP.